Today, we're diving into a story that's a real head-scratcher, sitting right at the intersection of a deeply personal mystery and a massive global tragedy. This is the story of Dr. Sneha Philip, a woman who vanished on the literal eve of 9/11, leaving behind a question that to this day has never really been answered.
So let's set the scene. It's September 10th, 2001, a rainy Monday night in Manhattan. The city is just being itself, alive, buzzing, with absolutely no idea that in just a handful of hours, its skyline, and honestly the entire world, was about to change forever. This is the before.
And this timeline right here, this is what frames the entire mystery. We're talking less than 12 hours. That's the window between Sneha Philip's last confirmed sighting and the moment the first plane hit the North Tower. It's like she just vanished into that tiny gap between a totally normal evening and a world-changing catastrophe.
So to even begin to understand what might have happened to her, we really have to look at who Sneha was and what she was doing in those final, seemingly ordinary moments before she disappeared off the face of the earth.
Okay, so Sneha Philip was a 31-year-old physician. And from what everyone said, she was bright, she was dedicated, living with her husband Ron in their apartment in Manhattan. On the surface, a pretty normal life. But, like any of us, her life had layers. It had its own private complexities.
So get this. We actually have security footage of her last known movements, and they're just strikingly normal. She was at a department store not far from her apartment, and she bought bedsheets, some candles, little things for the house. I mean, these are not the actions of someone who's about to just vanish, right? They're the actions of someone who fully intends to go home. And this, right here, is where the mystery really kicks into gear. Because despite buying all those things for her apartment, she never made it back. Her husband, Ron, he came home late and just figured she'd stayed out for the night, which was apparently something she did once in a while. But this night was different.
As the absolute horror of the next morning unfolds across the city, a really powerful and honestly poignant theory starts to take shape. It's a theory that puts Sneha right at the heart of the tragedy, as a hero.
And this theory makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Her apartment was literally right near the World Trade Center. And the thinking goes, she's a doctor. Her instinct, her training, would be to run towards the disaster, to help people, to save lives. It's a really noble image, and it totally fits with her being a physician.
But here's the problem. For a story that just feels so right, it is haunted by a critical lack of evidence. I mean, despite how much sense the hero theory makes, there is simply no proof she was ever there.
In the massive, and I mean massive, investigation that followed, not one person, not a single survivor, not a fellow rescuer, not an official ever reported seeing her at Ground Zero. Her remains were never identified. Her name never showed up on any list of volunteer medics or rescue workers. The hero theory, it was built on heart for sure, but not on hard facts.
And, this total lack of evidence, it forced investigators and her family to consider another possibility, one that was way more personal and suggested maybe, just maybe, her disappearance had nothing to do with the attacks at all.
This is the really unsettling alternative. What if the timing was just a tragic, almost unbelievable coincidence? What if Sneha vanished on September 10th for reasons that were completely her own, and the chaos of the 11th just erased her trail forever?
And look, this wasn't just speculation. Her life wasn't perfect. I mean, whose is, right? We know she was facing some challenges with her career, there were some personal disagreements going on, and, like we mentioned, there was this known pattern of her sometimes staying out all night after an argument. It paints a more complicated picture of a person who is under a lot of stress.
So, you're left holding these two completely different stories that you just can't square with each other. On one side, you've got a doctor who died a hero. On the other, you have a woman who might have used the cover of a national tragedy to simply walk away from her life. Both are possible. Neither is proven.
So why? Why couldn't investigators just crack this thing? Well, the answer is kind of baked into the very event that may or may not have been the cause of her disappearance in the first place.
Just think about it for a second. Any potential evidence, any witnesses from that night, any clues from that area around her apartment were likely just obliterated on September 11th. The city's entire focus was, and should have been, on rescue and recovery. A single missing person case, it just got swallowed up by the sheer scale of the tragedy.
So for 7 long years, this case just sat in limbo, a painful, unending uncertainty for her family. Then, in 2008, something finally happened. But it wasn't a new piece of evidence. It was a legal rule. After a really long legal fight led by her husband, Ron, a New York court finally made a decision. They officially added Sneha Phillips' name to the list of 9/11 victims. They basically concluded it was most likely she did in fact rush to help and died in the towers. It provided a kind of closure, but it didn't really answer the questions, did it?
And that pretty much brings us to today. Because even with an official death certificate, the story just doesn't feel finished. It's like the final page of Sneha's life is still unwritten, and in its place are just these haunting questions.
And that's why, even with that official ruling, this case just stays with you. You have to ask, why buy bedsheets and candles? These are nesting things, right? Things you do when you're planning for a future in your home, not when you're about to leave it. It just doesn't add up.
Then there's the biggest question of all about September 10th itself. Before the world even changed, something happened that kept her from going home. What was it? Was it an argument? A chance encounter? Some kind of personal crisis? We don't know.
And this is maybe the biggest hurdle for the hero theory. If she was down there helping at the towers, how did nobody see her? In a place with thousands and thousands of people, you would think a doctor actively helping would have left some impression on someone. But there's just silence.
In the end, Sneha Phillips' story is trapped. It's stuck between these two possibilities. She's an official victim of one of the worst attacks in history, and at the same exact time, she's the subject of a cold, unsolved missing person case. It's a place where truth and tragedy become one, and the final page may never be written.